good afternoon, good noon, morning, noon, no,
Whatever, still morning until noon.
Yeah, still morning. It's afternoon somewhere. By the way, I just came here with a call with Facebook about the new crypto coin they're launching later today at noon. So follow this news up on Calcalist because it's going to be something huge. But we're not going to talk about it right now. We need to talk about growth company. But first, I want to talk briefly about China. I know we already talked about China today, but you were involved in bringing a lot of money from China to Pitango, and I wanted to ask, on the back of the trade war, trade crisis, were there any problems with investment from China, defaults, or other problems, and how do you deal with them?
So first of all, you know, the whole issue of the trade war is a big issue that a lot of people are talking about. I think, but we have to look at Israel's position in the trade war. You know, when you have two huge oceans that are colliding together, we, at the end of the day, are a very small boat on it. I'll use the word chasake, you know, you can take it, that's what we are. And I think for Israel, as long as we can stay out of that war and don't take a stand, that should be the right thing to do, because you don't know what's going to be the outcome. At the end of the day, I believe that Asia in general and China specifically, the second largest economy in the world, cannot be ignored as a target market long term. So I believe that at the end of the day, that issue is going to be solved because both parties that are colliding each other have a lot to lose. So I don't know if it's going to end up at round 10 or round 15 when the two kind of boxing fighters are hugging each other. But I think at the end of the day, we'll see results, and hopefully we can stay out of it.
Okay, and on to our main topic, we're going to talk about hyper-growth companies. And when we talked earlier, actually yesterday, you mentioned in Israel it's a relatively new trend coming in a bit late, like 4 or 5 years after it became a big trend in the US.
So I think some of my colleagues have talked about this before, but I see that if you look at around 2008, 2009, it started in the US, the trend of growth companies. This trend of creating companies that are focusing on growth of revenues, on customers, I think started to come to Israel about 3-4 years after that. And since then, we are seeing a very strong momentum and a very good trajectory of companies that are really creating big companies. There were some discussions here about bubble or not. I think the one thing which is very important to see in our country here today is that we have today, yes, companies with high valuations, but we have a lot of companies, actually the highest number in the history of the country, of private companies that have more than $100 million in revenues. You know, we at Pitango, we have 7 of those. We never had such a number, and I think the industry in general never had such a number. And that's, there is real stuff behind those valuations. There are, as the American says, there are tires that you can kick. And that's, I think, the big news about this.
I think when you go to a hyper-growth company, there are all sorts of challenges that entrepreneurs don't know how to deal with. One of the biggest of them, I believe, is go from a company of 50, 60 people to a company of a few hundred people. You need not only to manage the transition, but also to keep a coherent company culture. So how would you advise companies to deal with the change?
So I think it's a very good point. When you are starting to grow companies to the level of this kind of revenues, you're also starting to face quite a few challenges. Now, there is a say in the US that the Bermuda Triangle of startups is growing between $50 million to $100 million. But that's not only the challenge of the revenues. One of the real challenge is usually this kind of companies, you're talking about 3, 4, 5, 700 people. It's not anymore the 50 people that you go along the corridor and you know everybody. And I think the entrepreneurs and CEO. And by the way, I think we have a generation of CEOs in Israel that Israelis, a lot of the companies that were presented here, the CEOs are still Israelis, and maybe they will be. And I hope that they will be in the future because it's going to create a lot of value to our industry. But going back to your aspect, is putting a lot of efforts in creating company culture, management, how you deliver the company culture all the way to new employees that just joined, to employee 850. This is a major challenge that can kill your growth or can kill the company if at the end of the day you don't know to maintain it. There are a lot of things, and I will say one thing here. A lot of people looking at, for example, organizational consultant at this kind of age as someone that needs to come when there is a crisis. So the answer is no. If you can get someone that helped you along the way to build up people that are really specializing on that, you get excellent results in building organization, management, and company culture.
Now, once you're a hyper-growth company, it's not only enough to have a good technology, it's not only enough to have the best technology or the best product, you also need to bring it to market. So, and we are talking about people are entrepreneurs, maybe they went to 8200, maybe they are really good at developing product, they don't necessarily know how to do go-to-market strategy. So how do you advise them on that front?
So first, I agree. If you look at the companies, and I think some people talked about here before, that are really successful, at the end of the day, you need just enough technology. Okay, there is a lot of people today, and also there was discussion on companies that are buying Israeli companies. Today, the big companies and the public market don't want to buy technology per se. It used to be a kind of a theme here in Israel. They want to buy businesses that are enabled by technology. So I think that very early on, if you can bring the right business people into your organization. And it might be that you are 8200 veteran that are great technologies. If you can make it to be a great business guy, that's great as well. But if you're not, I think very early on, and I've seen, I've invested with, my last 4 investments are entrepreneurs between the age of 27 to 32, and they are very good. They brought in people that have done that before, that scaled company, that their profession is go-to-market. I think at the end of the day, if you bring people that have experience in all the parameters and the management positions in the company, even if you are young, you can be extremely successful and still be the leader of the company.
Another challenge, I don't know if it's a challenge, but it's something you have to deal with. A lot of startups are US-oriented. They're very much looking for the US as a market. But once you go to a hyper-growth company, maybe the US is not enough. Maybe you need to, maybe you have to go to other markets. Will you agree with that?
Well, I think that today, if you look still, most Israeli entrepreneurs, when they wake up in the morning, they think US. US cost structure, US market, but that's not necessarily the way it should be. I think for us in Israel, we have an advantage. We are 10 hours from Hong Kong and 10 hours from New York. But I think there are opportunities around the globe. Either it's Europe, which is 4 hours away, or it's Asia. Asia is a big market. Yes, it's more difficult. I think you have to go to Asia when you are a mature company. You don't want really to do a beta site in Asia. It doesn't matter if it's China, Korea, or Japan. But if you have done well in the US, I think sooner rather than later, a company should think globally, should think about Asia and go to market. Of course, if the product is relevant to there. But if you have a product which is relevant to this market, or you have to do certain adjustment to make it relevant, I think it's worthwhile going there earlier rather than later.
We have just over 30 seconds, so I'll just ask one final question. What is the biggest mistake that a company can do after receiving a large fund, a large investment?
Well, spend it too quick and don't get the results. But I think at the end of the day, the fact that you're raising a lot of money does not mean that you start spray the money all over without real purpose. I think focusing on the key KPIs of a company in terms of kind of the ROI on the money that you spend in the company. If you build a new project and you don't have the plan how you're going to return the investment internally in the company, don't do that. Sometime it will happen that the product will not be successful. It's okay. But I think this kind of aspect, spend the money on growing the company in the right way and actually focus on the customer insight. And if the customers will become your partners, you will grow the company very fast.
Okay, great, Aaron. Thank you very much for your time. It's been great. Just to mention, 12
Thank you.
p.m., check out Calcalyst for the big news about the cryptocurrency coming from Facebook.